So you want to see how to take apart the Polaroid Go. I've taken this apart a few times, not because I've wanted to. I messed up. I'm doing a repaint on another one, and I ended up having to buy this one because I messed up some things. But I want to show you it's going to be pretty straightforward, and once you know what to look for, it's a lot less stressful. The first time I did this, it was super stressful. So first thing we're going to want to do, I'm going to open this up and show you. Inside here, you're going to see 4 screws. There's 2 on the back, and there's 2 on the front. You're going to need a small Phillips screwdriver, but this type isn't going to work because it's so fat that it's going to go in at an angle, and it's just a lot better chance of stripping the screw doing it this way. So what I got that works really well is this little Kobalt tool, and there's other tools like this, but basically it's a little screwdriver with switchable front ends here. So we'll just do this. You pull this back, and this tip comes off, and you can see there's a Phillips on one end and then a straight driver on the other. This is just a little magnet. I wanted to charge that up. It's always good to have that magnetized so the screw sticks to it. So you can see with a smaller bit, you can get that right down in there. So we're going to want to loosen those up, and they're pretty easy to loosen. Just want to make sure you go nice and slow. You don't want to strip that screw. The only thing you'll need to really worry about is not letting this screwdriver hit that mirror right there. But we're going to go in here and loosen up all these screws. So I have that magnet on there. So you can see it, then it just grabs it. The tendency is to go in like this, but you want to lower that screwdriver as straight as possible so there's no chance of stripping. And that's especially the case for when you put these back in, and I'll show you that when we get to that point. But for now, we're going to take everything apart. And now we're going to do the front. And you want to take your time doing this. There's no hurry. There's only 4 screws, so. All right, so there's 4 screws. The shorter ones are going to be in the back of the camera, and these longer ones go in the front. Just keep that in mind when you put this back together. And if I didn't mention it before, this is a little magnet, and I have that on there just so the screws all kind of stay together. Don't want to lose those. We're done with that for now. And you want to leave the bottom door open so it doesn't catch right there. So now we're going to take this apart. Now, this is what you want to keep in mind. Here's your camera. On the flash side, you want to keep this side up because inside here are all the gears. And this is where I messed up the first time I did this, and all the gears fell out. Keeping it in this position will allow the gears to stay where they're supposed to be. But we're going to very gently but firmly squeeze the sides and then eventually the top. And this will be all the release points of the latches. So we're going to squeeze here, and that's going to start to come apart, and then on the top. And as you do this, you'll feel, you don't want to force it. You'll just give it some pressure, move it a little bit, reposition where you're pressing for the release points. There we go. And you can see there, that's the main hook right there. That's what's really keeping you, see right there on the inside. So that's why we want to push this down so it releases underneath there. Right there, that top one is the main hook, and the rest are just pressure fitted. So even though I was squeezing, there's no actual like latch, but it does fit pretty snug where you want to squeeze there. So like I said, there's the gears. Keep them upright, and I'll show you that gear layout just in case yours end up falling out. So on this front plate, the thing you want to look for is this little rubber thing that comes out. So you want to keep an eye on that. When it's pushed in there, it's pretty good, but if you get tape near it or anything, it'll pull out. So it's better just to remove that and put that into a bag. The latches for the front little protective screen is right here. You can pop that out there and there if you want to remove that. So here's the bottom latch, and this is what it looks like when it's completely assembled. You'll see, I'm not going to take this apart, but you'll see that the spring is on 2 little pins. And I'll just show you that in case you need to take that apart and put it back together. That's what it's going to look like when it's together correctly. And to get that released, you'll just lift that little latch and that little latch there, and that will allow that to slide out. And then the switch will release, and then the spring right there will disconnect. That is what it looks like when it's together correctly, and that's how it should work, kind of like a little inchworm. Like I said, you want to keep these gears in the upright position. And I'm just going to kind of work it just a little bit. And I'm squeezing the sides firmly, but not too bad. Now, inside, there's another latch way back here, and that's the main one that's holding this front end in. So that's the one that's a little tricky. Now, the trouble with that is you can't push down because you'll actually engage it by pushing it down. You'll make it very strong. So you actually want to flex this by pushing it on the side. That'll flex that plastic up just enough that this can slide out. So when you squeeze this, you're going to squeeze both sides. You'll want to squeeze it lower, right about here. And you'll feel it because as you're wiggling it, I'm wiggling it like this. Like that, very gently though. I'm wiggling that and you'll feel it give way. And this is where it's going to be. There's two little runners on each side. You see that right there? This slides inside there. So I'm going to pull that out. And like I said, these gears are loose, so you want to keep an eye on those. And there you can see right there is where it latches on the top. And that piece is what latches right there on that thing. All right, so here are the gears. This is the correct layout. Mine all fell out everywhere the first time I did this. So if you can see, this was where I messed up. These two side gears right here, I had this one over here and this one over there. But if you have any issues, there's the layout. You'll have that reference. I'll take this top one off just so you can see the internal layout. So there you go. That's the gear layout. In case you have any issues, just put that back together like that. And then this one will go on top as the last one. And there you go. That's in place. And what I ended up doing was I put a piece of paper over this and then I taped it just to secure it so I could do my other maintenance to it. There you go. That's the Polaroid Go. And then we're going to reassemble this. Batteries on this side. You just want to be careful with anything with a battery. You could always get shocked. All right, we'll set that right there. So on the main case, if you want to take out this little viewfinder, it's going to be in this position with the dot on the top. You'll just take these two latches right here, push them to the side and push that through, push that one to the side, and then that'll come out. It comes out through the inside. So when you replace this, you'll need to push that through first. These buttons on top, unfortunately, are welded in, sonically welded into the plastic right there and there, along with that little power button right there as well. So those, you could take a chance and remove those, but you'll have to figure out how you're going to re-secure those back in. And that's pretty much everything. And you can see here when you're pushing on the side, it's just very subtle, but it does flex that middle part up. And that's how you release that top latch right there. But this was kind of nice to see this so you can actually see what you're dealing with. In the larger Polaroids, they have all kinds of extra hooks and stuff. It's a lot more complicated. So the main thing is this gearing. So now we're going to put this back together. Just so you can see, that's what it's going to look like when it's all back together correctly. Just like that. So we're going to slide this back in and reassemble it. So the main thing for this is making sure that those little rails right there are going in correctly, just like a drawer on a dresser, right? Put those in and you'll be able to feel if they're not in correctly. I'm just going to double check, make sure I'm in this rail. Looks good. And you'll feel it slides really easily once it gets into this point. So the only thing that holds it up is just that little bump right there hits those little components on the top, so you just want to be careful of those. You can see when you squeeze the sides, it just raises that right above those things. And then you'll get that in. And this is where at this point it's going to need to engage into that little latch in the back. So we're going to squeeze that back again. Is it in all the way? And this is how you know if it's in all the way or not. See right here, there's a space. There should not be any space back there. So right now we're butted up right up against that little internal latch. So this is where we have to just gently squeeze. There it goes. Went in. All right, the gears are still good. And you can see in the back there that's completely flush to the side. Now what I found on my assembly and disassembly, right here there's some electronics protective shields. You just want to push those down because I notice they flare up and they kind of catch when you go to slide the front casing on. You'll feel them hit and you'll see those right there. So you just want to push those down, make sure they're out of the way. And we're just going to slide that in. And this is a super snug fit. I mean, it fits exactly perfectly. It's amazing. So we're just going to shimmy it around, make sure it fits gently around the viewfinder screen there. And we're lined up. I'm just kind of pushing. I'm just trying to be as even as possible when I put this together. You can see when you don't have it lined up right, it doesn't want to go together. So there it goes. And mostly that pushback is because it's so snugly wrapped around that opening right there that if it's not lined up perfectly, it won't let it go together. And there it goes. That's the final thing. And you can kind of help it again, like I said, by just squeezing the side there. And everything you do, you'll feel when it doesn't feel right. Like it should snap together pretty easily, and you shouldn't have to force it. And you can just double check. See right there, I have a little bit of a space. So that's just because that last two screws aren't put in yet. So just want to make sure everything works before you completely reassemble it with the screws. And like I said, those two screws will hold that together, so that's good. That's all snug. Good to go. And now we're going to put this together. As I mentioned before, the shorter screws will go in the back and the longer ones will be in the front. Reassembly is a little bit slower process because you really want to make sure that these screws go completely flush. They should not be at an angle like this going in. You got to make sure of that because once you screw it in and it rethreads that plastic, you're done for. So, and something I do with all electronics, for small screws like this, especially ones that are going back into a plastic threading, I like to turn it backwards, the opposite direction that you need to tighten. And by doing this, you'll feel it go into the groove and it'll kind of click. And once it clicks, then you'll know to tighten it forward. And then you know you're right in the threads. It's just a little trick. It works for all electronics, but it really works good for this, just to make sure you're lined up correctly. All right, this one's not completely tightened. I just wanted to show you how important it is that they're completely straight. You'll see them because I've done this before, and they'll be slightly at an angle, and you know that's not the correct threading for it. This part is probably the most tedious part, and it'll probably drive you crazy because this screwdriver needs to be super straight. And I would say that if you can get a hold of a smaller screwdriver, there's ones that are for fixing eyeglasses. Those things are only about that long. This setup works pretty well, but you can see even when it's engaged, it still hits, so it's not perfectly straight. So a smaller one. And it definitely, you gotta have some nimble little fingers to get in there and do this, but I just wanted to show you that. I'm going to tighten all four of these up, and that'll be that. One thing I wanted to mention, if you saw, both of those little screws were slightly up, and that was because I was doing this similar to how you would do like car lug nuts, where I tightened it down just a little bit, and then brought this one down a little bit, this one a little bit more, and then this one a little bit more. You don't want to tighten one all the way down because this could crank over and be uneven and break something. And if I didn't mention it, you want to use hand tools. Don't use any power tools for these. This is very delicate, and you can just finger tighten it. You'll know when these front screws are snug because this seam right here will be even all the way around. I don't have any trick for putting these back ones in. They're a little bit tougher. You just got to be patient and work slowly. But again, rolling the screw backwards until it clicks. Right there, it just clicked. And then you just tighten it in very gently. Make sure it's straight, and it should tighten right in. And when I say straight, you can see how these are lined up. They're perfectly symmetrical to the edge because this needs to go completely flush so it doesn't catch on anything when you put the cartridge in and everything. And you can see that they're both up. I'm going to go in and tighten this one a little bit more, and then that one a little bit more. Final snug, final snug. Once everything's tightened, you'll just double check all of the fittings, make sure this seam looks good, give it a little, make sure nothing's loose. And if you have any dust or anything on your mirror, if you have something like this from your other cameras, I always recommend just blowing it out first. You might not need to actually do anything else. You don't want to use anything like paper towels or anything like that, obviously. Or if you have one of these little lens brushes, photography brush, there is something that seems to be not coming off. Clean that up and you are good to go. Thanks for watching. I hope that was helpful. Good luck, and share your mods if you end up doing anything cool with that. Knob top, go make something. This was just some experimenting I was doing with some vinyl wrapping. I was just seeing if I could save myself the trouble of taking this apart by just wrapping it. It could work. There's a lot of curves right here that are a little bit more difficult to wrap. You can see there's all those seams, but you know, always something, right? If nothing else, I was able to get a perfect cutout of this, so maybe that's a simple little thing, just a simple color change for the front face. I have that template. Maybe I'll put that in the description. If anyone's interested, let me know. A little Illustrator file you can just print out and cut out.